Thank you for the introduction. So yes, my area of research is in optics, and it's particularly related to diagnostic instruments for the eye. And I have put in here like a subtitle, what do retinal photoreceptor cells and sunflowers have in common, like a question, and hopefully we'll learn a bit about that. So it was very nice to have the previous speaker just before me. So you know a lot about the eye already if you didn't know before you came. But basically most of us would have two eyes, and the eyes are almost globes or spheres in shape, roughly 24 millimeter. And at the back of the eye, is there a pointer? Yes, there's a pointer here. Okay, I don't get that one. It is working. Yeah, I got it. Thanks. So here at the back of the eye, we have the retina, and the retina is kind of the screen where we have all the photoreceptors that help us see. And it's pressed here against the back of the eye due to the intraocular pressure that also keeps the shape of the eye as a sphere. We have roughly around 6 million cones in the retina and 90 million rods. So 6 million cones is kind of similar to what we have in the digital cameras, and those cones are the ones that provide us with color vision. Rods are those we would use in very dim light, so it's not like the bats, but still when we can't really perceive color, we can just see shapes and slight brightness. There we use the rods if it is really dark. It's hard to find very dark places nowadays, even at night, due to street lights and so on. But we do have them, and they operate in the retina. I show you there also, just to the right of it, a typical fundus image. So if you go into a clinic and they try to look at your retina, that would be the kind of images that they typically take, where you see the optic disc, this circular area, and that's where we have the blind spot. So we have no photoreceptors at the optic disc. And the fovea, the one you're all looking with now, is this part of, it's called the macula. This area, the fovea, is the central part of this, and this is where we have high visual acuity or very densely packed cones and no rods. So I'm from Denmark, and Niels Bohr was too, and he had a view on the eye that owing to the very limits imposed by properties of light, no instrument is imaginable which is more efficient for its purpose than the eye, and I hope to show a bit of the reasoning behind that. So here are some other animals now. For instance, we have the land snail here with the eyes up here, kind of some, well, you could call it almost antenna eyes, but the eyes are situated all up here at the end. The mantis shrimp is a famous species because this one has actually 12 types of cones, so it can see colors across a longer range than humans can do, into the ultraviolet and also into infrared. And not only that, it doesn't need sunglasses really, because it can sense polarization with its eyes, so it has a lot of properties. It may not be using all of them, but properties that go beyond what the human eye is capable of. Then we have the fruit fly here, which has a lot of small individual kind of waveguides, so they don't provide accurate vision. There are no lenses here, but it can see shadows. So if we come with our hand maybe to catch this fly, if it catches the shadow or maybe also the wind or the drift that we create, it would move away. But basically it's just looking for changes in brightness. And then here I show also one type of shrimp. And if you look very closely at the eyes, you see that there are very elongated structures here down to their retinas. And these are again optical fibers, biological optical fibers, similar to those that we use for the internet optical fibers. But here guiding the light from the top facet here of the eye and down to the retina. So there is a thing known in plants as phototropism, and you have all seen sunflowers. Basically, even during the course of one day, they would trace the sun and try to capture as much light as possible. So this mechanism is known as phototropism. We can also find similar things if we go into the sea. I show just here corals with algae growth. And humans actually have a similar thing. But just before that, let me show you how the cone and the rods, they look schematically. So this is one single human photoreceptor cone, and this is one single human photoreceptor rod. So as you can see, they are very long. They are not that long, but on this kind of scale, they are long. They are more or less 100 micrometer or 0.1 millimeter from one end to the other end. And the light comes actually from the front of the eye, which is facing downwards. So it propagates all up here, and it's only when it reaches this outer segment that the light is absorbed and we create vision. So the light has to travel a long distance, much longer than the optical wavelength of the light itself, before it's actually absorbed. And here we have the short, medium and long wavelength range cones, but if we instead zoom in on the outer segment, here with an electron microscope, we can see all the individual layers. So these pigments that absorb the light, the opsons, they are actually packed into stacks of membranes. These membranes are only about 20 nanometer apart. We have about 1,000 membranes in each single photoreceptor. And every night when we go to sleep and wake up again in the morning, approximately 10% of this outer segment, they break off, accumulate, and are more or less dissolved in the back of the eye. But we renew roughly 10% of this per day. So it's really a lot of renewal of pigments that's going on all the time. This also means that small amounts of toxic materials start to accumulate in the retina, because not all of it is removed by biological processes. So as we get older and older, problems with the eyes start to increase and become more prominent simply due to small residues of waste from the photoreceptor renewal. And there is a famous effect in ophthalmology known as the Stiles-Crawford effect. And the Stiles-Crawford effect is this kind of phototropism, similar to what you saw for the sunflowers. Photoreceptors, the cones, would move around in the retina to point towards the pupil. It's not as fast as the sunflowers, that it wouldn't happen within one day. But the photoreceptors, for instance, here in a case of a person with cataract, the cataract was clouding nearly all of the lens, and the light could come in just here at the edge of the pupil. After removing the cataract, putting in an intraocular lens with surgery, well, after roughly 10 days, these photoreceptors pointed towards the new center of the pupil. So there is an active mechanism in the human eye that basically makes our photoreceptors point towards the middle of the pupil, where they capture most light. So the way we like to think of this is that each single photoreceptor is like an optical antenna. So here I have pictured schematically all these photoreceptor cones that are directed to receive most light, similar to antennas would be, and basically pointing towards the middle of the pupil in the healthy eye. So if you have retinal disease, the pointing here might be deteriorating. So I show just here, now it's almost lunchtime, pancakes and pigments. This is basically how the outer segments of the photoreceptors look. Well, here we have about 10 pancakes, but you should imagine a stack of 1,000 pancakes. That's almost dangerous to imagine now. You get all hungry. But yeah, 1,000 pancakes, all with pigments like the jam here between the pancakes, absorbing the incident light. And it's really not very easy for the light to go through unless we really bleach the retina. For instance, if we take a strong flash photograph, we can bleach all these pigments, and then the light would be able to go deeper into the structure. One of the things that we are developing then is a technique to look not just like the normal fundus images, the retinal images, but try to resolve the individual cones, which we are trying at the moment here. We are borrowing a technique from astronomy. So in astronomy, they have deformable mirrors that they help to remove aberrations of the atmosphere when they make telescopes on ground. The most expensive, the best telescopes on ground would have this. So we have deformable mirrors incorporated into our ophthalmoscopes that we can look at the eye or the retina, and they correct for the ocular aberrations. For instance, we have a tear film that keeps our front cornea humid all the time. And if this dries, when we have dry eyes, we don't see so well, maybe we rub our eyes, or we need to apply some droplets to the eye. And this is because of the aberrations that occur once the cornea starts to dry. So just to show you what happens if you were affected by age-related macular degeneration, it mostly happens with age, and actually it happens to approximately 1 in 10 people aged 55 years or older. So if you have normal vision, you would see me and my former colleague here, something like this. If you have the onset of macular degeneration, you would start to see your vision would be slightly distorted. And if it's really, really advanced, you would lose vision in the middle. You would just have a dark spot in your visual field, and you can only see here in the periphery, very distorted. And this is a one-way process, so once you have this condition, there is no cure to bring you back. So what we are trying to do, or doctors are trying to do, is halt the progression, the disease, at an early stage as possible to slow down the progression of the disease. But the longer we live, if we all live to be 100 or older, we all end up having these retinal diseases. So there is really no way around it. Some of the systems we are using ourselves as subjects. So here a former student of mine, for instance, looking into light, and we are using this system then to test how our photoreceptors see different colors as we move the light beams across the eye pupil. And you can see up there in the corner basically what he's looking at. In this system, he has to compare the brightness of the left and the right-hand side and try to make everything match. Okay, I can see I'm basically out of time. I'll only mention we are trying to build now also a retinal simulator, and the ultimate goal with this will be that we can make some kind of retinal implants, because current retinal implants that people who have completely blindness or lost vision, retinal implants are basically like a CCD chip, and that would capture light from all directions. We want to make some kind of directional capturing of the light, which limits it to the pupil area, and therefore you get much less glare, and you would improve vision if you were to end up having a retinal implant someday. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.